Hi, Tara Christie, President and CEO of Banyan Gold. Great to see you again, Matthew. Banyan Gold is advancing our Aurex project. We're now well funded, 3 drills turning, and planning a really exciting 2022. You can expect a resource update in Q2 2022. We're already at 25,000 meters today for this year, targeting over 30,000 meters, and we'll drill over 30,000 meters next year. So very exciting times for Banyan, and certainly a transformative year for us.
Tara, lovely to see you again. I haven't seen you since July. Was it July? You showed us around the camp. Your high vis. Yeah, I remember. Okay. So I think that was great. It was nice to actually see how the business. But the reason I'm calling up is you put out some press release. You've got these lovely wide intervals, of good grades. So you must be kind of pleased with the way that's going, and 3 drills turning as well. So why don't you give us an update in terms of what's happening in the field, and we'll kind of get into it after that.
So yeah, since we saw you, we did that financing, brought in $16 million, and that's really transformed us, because we now know what we're going to do for this year and next year, and we've been doing a lot of planning, doing some risk assessments, understanding where our greatest risks are to slowing our project down and our program, and putting those things in place, hiring people. We have the advantage in that we're drilling through the fall and the winter. We have 3 drills turning right now. We took a lot of time to plan to actually get set up for that and to continue to drill through the winter. And we're, other people are shutting down. We're able to hire more people to add to our team. I think it's really setting us up well for 2022.
Well, it is actually. Look, okay, maybe let's start with this actually, because I think I did want to talk about the drill results and how you've gone about allocating your capital that you've raised. But maybe start with this. You're a different company now from the one I spoke to a year ago, where you were, tiny company, not a lot of capital, an idea of what you wanted to do. No one's paying attention. It was a tough gig, right? And you needed to behave a certain way there to try and get noticed. You had to be frugal with capital. With $16 million in the bank, you're going to need to behave a different way, because you're going to need to paint a different picture to the marketplace. So that change in philosophy in the company, can you describe what you think you were and what you need to now be?
Sure. Back when we were a 5 million market cap pre-resource in May of last year, expectations were all of our money focused on exploration, and maximizing the number of ounces we would get. And while we're still focusing on spending our money well and maximizing ounces, there's a lot more that we need to be focusing on. Now we need to be taking the ESG side much more seriously. We need to be getting our workforce, because we are going to be very busy. We need a reliable and trained workforce. A lot more investors now, and now that we're 60 million market cap company, there's a lot more expectations, and many of our investors want to see how we're doing and how we're ranking, and we're doing a lot of that, and we have been doing a lot of that when we were a smaller company, but not necessarily reporting on it. Now we need to actually show people what we're doing and demonstrate it, as well as ramp up. 3 drills is a significant change in the infrastructure that we had when we were a smaller company, and we had 1 drill. We need more space. We need to put some money into things like internet in camp and the space in camp, the number of rooms. Setting up for winter drilling means preparing for that. Yes, it's very possible to drill right through the winter, but you need heaters. You need to be able to plug your vehicles in, and you need enough generator power. There's all the little details, and that we're taking a lot of time to try and get some of that right, and ultimately that will save us money. So in what we're doing, roads, where are we planning for roads? Are we talking with the First Nation about what our plans are to make sure that we stay on side? Are we maximizing what we're drilling in the winter, where it's swampy, versus the stuff you can dry it when it's not frozen and it will be dry? Where are our water sources? We put in wells so that we have water for when things freeze up. Do we have heated water tanks? All of that takes a lot of logistics and planning. And I think that's something that our team does really well, and will, put us ahead of others. Being able to drill through the winter lets us advance this very, very quickly. We showed when we were a smaller company, our technical team is spot on. Our geological model is telling us where to follow this mineralization. We focused on powerline this year because of how exciting it is, and it's still open in all directions. We're chasing it to the east and to the west and a little bit more to the north because we're seeing some higher grade, longer intercepts than to the south. But there's still lots of work to be done there. We're also doing a little bit of infill drilling this fall so that we understand the variography and what it's going to take to convert this from an inferred resource, which will also set us up and really tell us more about the mineralization and the deposit. So, we're combining adding ounces with the science as well as metallurgy. We've expanded our metallurgical program. We're doing columns, we're doing more bottle rolls. We're evaluating what we did in our baseline environmental work and what more we need to do, what data we can get from our two neighbors and our big shareholders, Victoria Gold and Alexco. What would we need to do to fill in for permitting, making sure we're communicating with the First Nation, both on what we've done this year, what we're planning to do next year, and what the realistic expectations are for our project as we move through the next few years. So, all of that work takes a lot of effort. And then on the ESG side, what we're doing to be visible to the community is really important. And it's something we're putting a lot of our effort this fall into.
So it feels a lot more real. And we've had a few chats now, and we've seen it kind of grow, right? So, but it feels a lot more real. There's a lot more moving parts. There's a lot more you need to be in control of and manage. With regards to the money bit, though, you've gone and raised 16 million. You went out for just under 12, raised 60 million. So that's good news. What sort of money came in? Was it more institutional now as they're starting to see this story build?
Well, one of the major shareholders was Franklin Gold and Precious Metals. They're now a 7% shareholder. And, they really are of value. They want long-term value, invest in gold, also cared about the ESG. Several institutions. There weren't actually a lot of investors in the financing. It really was, we really wanted long-term holders who were going to add value as shareholders. Very limited amount of flow through, almost $500,000 of that was to me. So I wanted to maintain my 5.5%. Victoria Gold's at 12%, Alexco at 7%, Cisco Development at 5%, and Franklin at 7%. So that's a really strong shareholder base. We think, which is setting us up well for next year and beyond.
What were the terms of the deal? Just remind me, what did you raise it? Because I'm sort of intrigued. I had a conversation earlier this week with someone who said they just received a chunk of change from institutions, and their big driver was you've got to have got your ESG nailed. And if you've got your ESG nailed, we'll carry on with the rest of the conversation. But I'm not proceeding unless I understand what you've done and if it meets our criteria. And it did. And the money was cheaper, right? So that's when you sort of move further down into the development stage. That's the kind of benefit of the ESG component, as you were talking about. But in terms of, can you give us a background of? Can you give us an understanding of what the 16 million cost you, and do you think you could have gone and got more? Do you need any more?
I think we could have got more, but it wouldn't have been as good of a deal for our shareholders. It would have been at a lower back end price. So, we did the back end was 28 cents. The front end of the charity flow through was 38 cents and 35 cents in the regular flow through, and only 2 million of the regular flow through. So not a whole lot out in flow through. And that's typically the stuff that you see sell in 4 months. I think we've held up really well. That financing was done at a pretty good price to our market price, no warrants, which is also unusual. So I think if we'd, and partly it was because of our ESG, many of those shareholders that came in that financing did want us to walk through their ESG, know what we were doing and get some evidence that we're actually doing that. And so, I think we could have raised more money at lower prices, but we don't need more money. This is a really comfortable place for us to be. We have a great work program planned for this year and for next year. We're doing lots of work to de-risk the actual work. You hear all this talk about inflation, lack of people, supply chain issues. Well, now we can plan ahead. We're ordering in inventory. We're making sure we have enough fuel storage so that, we don't unnecessarily get shut down. We're hiring the people that we need for next year. We're signing our drill contract for next year so that we have our drills guaranteed. So, that's a real advantage for us to have that security and to be able to do all of this planning up front for next year. And it is a change because before what do you mean buy 4 extra filters? And now it's like, yes, we know how many we're going to need. Let's just order it, save time. We don't have to go and order that. Those are really small expense. just as one example. But, when you're able to take a lot of that busy work off because you've done it pre-planned, it's going to make us more efficient. And it's going to protect us from those supply issues and inflation issues if they continue to raise their head.
It's a really interesting time at the moment for people and companies that have, with management teams who've been through it before, or got the individuals who've done their minute before. It's a little bit easier to navigate what are quite choppy waters, because we're seeing a lot of this just-in-time philosophy of the past really coming up against the wall, the harbour wall here, because they're being battered because they can't get the materials they want from outside, and if they can, there are long lead times to that, and things are getting more expensive. You talk about inflation. We've seen that with transportation, but also some of the items that are being ordered too. So I think it's a different mentality needed now. You've got to, as you talked about, fuel or filters or whatever you need to have. But you need to have an inventory running now, which doesn't seem efficient, but if you don't, it could be quite perilous.
Well, it could be. Can you imagine if you have 3 drills turning and you can't get the fuel in that you need, and then you've got people sitting around with it? So, having a little bit more storage is actually really important in that planning. And, 2 years ago, we couldn't do that because we didn't have the additional money to invest in that sort of stuff. So it saved us money. But now we do. So, growing our team, I've hired somebody to help with communications, both on the community and the investor side. And, it takes a little time for them to get their feet running. But I think going into 2022, we're going to be well positioned for that. Operationally, we're getting the right people in place to, be able to drill efficiently, deal with a larger number of people in our camp, manage that, look after our assets and the things that we've rented from contractors to be able to operate. That's all really important, and ultimately it's going to put us in good standing. It can't be underestimated how much the actual management of the program is important. The science, and again, we take the time. We're taking the time to take a step back. Let's think about what we actually want to do. Let's wait for those columns before we start the next work, whatever that is. If we're going to do more columns, are we going to do more model rules? We have a bit of time now, so we can actually use the information we're getting and plan ahead, which is, we always were very efficient in our drill program, picking our spots based on where our geological model, looking at our core. Even when you get a bigger program, you need to make sure that you have your geos go look at every hole before you plan the next holes. And sometimes some programs, they're just so overwhelmed, busy drilling, they don't make sure that they're actually checking with what they have, and they wait till they get the assays back. Well, we can tell when we have sheeted veins or visible gold in core, and power lines had a lot more visible gold than we've seen before. And so, that helps guide us without having to wait for the assays. And talking to the labs. With the times have really slowed down now, and so we haven't put out as many drill results as we'd like. We're still waiting for those results from Aurex Hill. It doesn't concern me. We've got lots of targets. Powerline continues to be open, but I want to get a better deal for next year and get some guaranteed timelines from the lab. So, we're working with them as well. And I appreciate they have people problems. There seems like the labor positions are the biggest problem for drillers, for labs, for us. So let's help them get that problem solved and get them to actually commit to some timelines for next year, because that will help us.
So just talking about managing expectations mostly for retail, okay, because there's a change in the arena in which you guys play and operate, in the sense that lead times are taking a little bit longer. The just-in-time stuff doesn't work. You've got to spend money building inventory, so it still sits there on the balance sheet, whichever line item you put those things. But the money's getting spent up front. No, sorry. You've raised some money, and more of that's being spent up front because the just-in-time stuff doesn't work anymore, right? But the assets are still there on the balance sheet. Do you think that retail investors need to think differently about or the way that they value companies because of this change in the way that you as miners need to manage your business in this type of environment where you are having to secure maybe slightly more expensive staff? Maybe more staff than you normally would, and for companies like you specifically, where you're moving from early stage exploration into a slightly more sophisticated exploration business. So is that a kind of expectation management which you need to help retail investors understand?
I think so. Because we're funded, we're not waiting for the next press release, and we're not rushing to finance. That lets us be able to really spend the time thinking about what we're doing and putting the time and effort into our programs and our planning. I would be concerned about companies that are waiting till next year. I don't know if they'll be able to get drills or people. Certainly this year there was huge pressure on companies, even that had signed their drill contracts early, to be able to execute on their programs, either to get the people or the drills. So I think that it is a huge advantage. It's something that I look for in things that I invest right now. Beyond Banyan, I'm of course a big investor in Banyan, but I do look at other companies and follow their stories. So I think it is a significant risk for some countries. I also think people are starting to look to first world countries. Some of the issues in places where you might see nationalization of assets or increased pressures because of debt, that's a worry as well. So I think we're in a Tier 1 jurisdiction. We've got 2 mines that have been permitted right beside us in the last few years. We've got a knowledgeable First Nation that understands mining, understands the risks, and wants to see responsible development, which, that's on us to show that we're responsible, we're following the rules, we're exceeding the best practices, so that, that's what sets your project up long-term to be able to go through the development process in a first world country. So you need to do that. It's really important, and you can't leave it to just before you're going to get the permit. You need to do that well in advance, get your social license to operate.
No, and I definitely understand that. I think we've had some great conversations in the past about that. But with the money, you're doing your drilling program. Some of the numbers are great. 145 meters at 0.74. You got over 110 meters at 0.62. These are huge intervals for you, but you're doing that in the context of assay labs not being able to tell you exactly what you've got. And I appreciate what you're saying with regards to being able to see some of the visible gold, and you've got some ideas about how you go about it. But do you feel like you should slow it down a bit until the assays catch up, or do you think that you've got the right technical expertise to be able to say, hey, let's crack on in these areas because I want to put out, or I'm under some pressure to put out a resource update? Do you feel under pressure?
No, I'm really quite confident in what our team has been able to achieve. Always disappointed in the labs because you want that, you want the results, but quite frankly, our geological model is pretty robust. And we redesigned our drill program after, the lab started to slow down to focus on areas, particularly powerline to the east and the west, and then that infill where we knew that we would be able to continue to add a lot of value. So yes, we're waiting for Aurex Hill. We're not going back to Aurex Hill until we get those results, so we understand how the mineralization is occurring there and where to go next. And also, in the wintertime, that's a little bit more challenging to drill there. So it is possible, and we can get ourselves set up for that. But we want to get those results back before we go there. And thankfully, we have enough targets. We've got such a large area. We're focused on roughly a 4 by 5 kilometer area, which should contain Airstrip, Powerline, and Aurex Hill. And within that, there's lots of targets. We'll try and get to some of the regional stuff next summer. Which, we've got other targets on our property, the Nitra property, which is just to the west. We did some soils on that, and we're getting those soil results back, and we've got time now to think about it. So I'm pretty pleased with what we're being able to do this fall, and the weather's been terrific. So it hasn't been very cold yet, which has been a big advantage for us.
So tell me about the planning going forward. I mean, what can we expect to see? Because you've got potentially, three pits here potentially, right? You can go and drill anywhere you want in any order that you see fit, in the context of not really having as much information back as quickly as possible from assay labs. What kind of guidance are you giving to the market and saying, here's how I think we're going to come at this? We're going to paint a picture for you, which is of a company which is going to be what? I mean, I'm just sort of intrigued because you have to be agile, you have to be nimble, you have to adjust to market conditions, but at the same time, you need to kind of keep delivering stories in what is a kind of a pretty precious metal market at the moment? This year's been quiet, let's be muted for precious metals. So what do you do?
Well, I think we need to show that we have the scale of deposit for this to be a standalone project. And, when Victoria Gold permitted, they had 2 million ounces in reserve, grade 0.63. I think because of the precious metals market, and I think the new number that you need to have for a project to be a standalone project in our jurisdiction in the Yukon is probably 3 million ounces. So, that I think getting up to that scale is our next priority. Continue to drill, show that in terms of inferred resource, there's the potential for that and more. And you need blue sky potential. And we have large land package, so we have that. So first step is to get to there and demonstrate that. We're doing the other work about understanding what it would take, where you might put infrastructure, because eventually we're going to want to start drilling places that don't have mineralization so we can find places for infrastructure, which, not yet, but we're planning ahead for that now. We're already doing some conceptual planning. Maybe it's 3 pits. Maybe Powerline and Aurex Hill are connected. Maybe it's 1 pit. Maybe you start one side. And so, looking at those various scenarios and reasonably thinking through. And when you've got time to do that, it gives you more opportunity to think through various scenarios, look at different options, and then, field check things. So I think that's, where we are planning to start our PEA next year after we put out that resource. And so we want to have done that advanced work. And because we want to start doing some of the baseline environmental, in the Yukon, you need 3 years of baseline environmental work before you go into the environmental assessment and permitting process. We started last year. We did a program this year, but we need to look at that and make sure that we're covering enough areas and we're getting the right things. Are we missing something that's going to be a showstopper? And that's all part of our bigger picture risk analysis of what we need to do. Ultimately, we're adding value by adding ounces, getting to that 3 million threshold. Secondly, we're adding quality of ounces. So, there's a value, whatever it is in this current time in the market for ounces in the ground. But then there's the quality of those ounces. Are you in a jurisdiction where you can permit that project? Do you have infrastructure? Have you just shown that it's recoverable? Have you done the metallurgy? Have you done the baseline environmental? Have you done the ESG? So that's the value add. So, if you're going to re-rate, and I think 2022 is you're going to see the good companies in the precious metal space re-rate based on those 2 factors, the total ounces in the ground and then the quality of those ounces, which encompasses all those other aspects of the project. And so have we captured all of them? We've started our risk register and we look at what those key items are moving the project forward. And that's, having time through this winter to do that is really valuable.
No, I agree with you. I think next year is about fundamentals. Ounces in the ground is good. There's a kind of old adage, and I'm not sure it holds true necessarily all the time, which is, grade is king. But I think its amount of contained metal in the ground should determine the economics of something. So what are you going to be able to do with 16 million? I think you've written somewhere that you're funded into 2023, but what's your target for what that's going to be able to do for you in 2022 in terms of ounces? Well, you're talking about maybe 3 million is the target, but do you think you could realistically get to 3 million ounces with 16 million bucks?
Well, I think it's absolutely realistic to get there. When you look at the geology on the property and how much we've already expanded Powerline, the prospectivity at Aurex Hill. So we'll drill 30,000 plus meters this year. We don't have a hard limit. If we can get extra meters this year, we will. And then we'll drill 30,000 meters plus next year. We'll pick a date from our drilling this year when, this is the assays we're going to put in that resource update, but then we'll keep drilling because we know that, things continue to be open. We don't want to slow down, but we do want to show the market where we are in Q2 next year. And then, get started on all that other work outside of that, and then start our PEA, and we're funded for all of that. So at least 30,000 meters we're planning for next year, which, we're already meeting later this week to get our drill contract organized on that. We've already been in discussions. So, I think it is realistic that we'll be able to do that program next year.
So, and just remind me again that with the infill, you're planning how much infill drilling in all of this and to what end?
Really to understand the variography. So just one small area, and on our website, we do have our drill maps. We've got basically a star pattern in the northeast end of Powerline, where we're infill drilling at 25-meter spacings to understand. It's a small program, just to really understand the geology and how the mineralization is occurring and what it's going to take to later convert this to measured and indicated. And then most of it, we're still focused on those 100-meter step out to the east and the west, and then continuing to go to the north. So, the power line area to the east there, towards Aurex Hill, we saw lots of VG and a lot of those holes, lots of those nice VG photos on our website. And we're continuing to follow up on that. And so far, we haven't found an edge to power line. So gives us lots of targets around.
Brilliant. Sorry, look, keep focusing on those fundamentals. It's impressive what you've done in the last year. And stay in touch and let us know how you get on. I got one last question, which is, how is every student every day? How's that going?
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have some exciting news. I'm going to Whitehorse this week to actually do some presentations for students who participated in our water bottle contest, as well as some of the projects we funded. And we're going to be announcing we're giving out more money than ever in response to COVID, in response to what we're seeing in Canada for the push really for reconciliation on the education level. And so really excited about that. I've been working on it for almost 10 years now, and finally starting to get some real momentum at a time when it's most needed. We gave out $150,000 last year. We had $400,000 in demand. We're expecting unprecedented demand. And, I think we're going to have over $300,000 to give out this year. So very excited about that.